Hey, Milkify team. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Brittany. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're having a party today. So we got two founders from Milkify, and we got my co-founder, Dr. Julie Hakeem, with us too.
Hi, y'all. Super excited to talk to you all about milk and milk products. Let's go.
Hell yeah. Well, this is really fun because I actually know Berkley from my time in my PhD program. So we are actually old friends. We were studying like Krebs cycle and cell membranes and small RNA splitting and all this stuff back in the day, right?
Absolutely, yeah, good times. Yep, yeah, I went to Baylor College of Medicine with Brittany, and both of us graduated with PhDs from the same place around the same time, and different labs, but we had different focuses of study, but definitely good times.
Yeah, I studied antibiotic resistance in E. coli, not exactly FemTech. Not exactly, did not set me up for that trajectory just yet.
Right.
Well, we love to start our episodes with some background story. You know, like I just said, right? I studied E. coli. Now I'm leading a FemTech podcast. Usually FemTech careers don't start off in FemTech careers. So can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, you're dynamic. So you're co-founders, but you're also partners.
Married, yes.
Yes.
On the way.
Yep.
Baby on the way. So awesome. Very, very appropriate for your product. I mean, you'll definitely be a customer, I'm assuming. But tell us about your backgrounds first. Where are you from? What did you study? And how'd you meet each other? And then tell us what Milkify is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Berkley Luck. And during my studies, my focus was on the infant gut microbiome, or the bacteria that colonize your intestines and your gut tract when you're first born up through toddlerhood, basically. And really, we're only beginning to understand the effects that these bacteria have on our health and development, even later in life. And so that's how I kind of got introduced to the importance of our diets early in life. And as you know, the diet that you have earliest in life is breast milk, most of the time. And this breast milk contains the bacteria that's so important for colonizing our gut during this early stage. And so that's kind of how Milkify got started. When I was looking into this kind of thing, I was familiar with freeze drying. Part of my research involved saving probiotic strains of bacteria, and we used freeze drying in the lab to preserve these bacterial species. And so being familiar with it, it started with a simple question, why don't we freeze dry breast milk? It just seemed like a better way to save it. And the more I looked into it, the more I found that recent research was showing that breast milk stored in the freezer degraded over time, and you lose all these essential nutrients and vitamins and antioxidant capacity that makes breast milk the gold standard for infant nutrition. And so fast forward, I graduated and started testing this idea out. And after about a year of testing, fine-tuning, yeah.
Perfecting a proprietary process of specifically freeze drying human breast milk, which is not the same as freeze drying potato chips, et cetera, right?
Exactly, yeah. So it took a little while to get the process down, and after about a year, we had the process for breast milk specific freeze drying, and that's what we decided to build the service around. And so this not only solved the problem of having your breast milk freeze dried turns it into a powder. So having this powder makes you able to store it on the shelf with no refrigeration, but it also gives you the same conveniences that powdered infant formula and that kind of thing would provide you.
And that was big for me. So thinking about becoming a dad, nighttime feedings, or just being alone with the baby and having to thaw the milk in the middle of the night, having a conference call in the morning, having powdered breast milk in a convenient package just makes life so much easier, so much more convenient for both mom and for dad, and it's better for baby as well. So coming from the corporate background, I just saw the huge opportunity that there is. And so I jumped all in with Berkley and decided, let's take my business skills, your science skills, and let's build an awesome company and scale this thing and just bring powdered breast milk to the entire country.
Were you also just really in love with her and you're like, whatever you want to do, dear, I'm with you?
You know, when you wake up every day and you work with your best friend and you do something that you love, you know, you get up at 6 a.m. and it's way better than having to get up for a conference call at 9 a.m. because someone else told you to. So every day is just completely awesome. And you know, I'm lucky that we get to build this business together.
It's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, I already have a bunch of questions, but before I dive into it, Pedro, can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from? You said corporate?
Yeah, that's right. So I spent 8 years as basically in finance as an investor. I come from a private equity background. I'm originally from Brazil, where we have a huge breastfeeding support culture. And so I was a little shocked when I came to the US and saw that there's just no culture around supporting women in the workplace and through their breastfeeding journey. And so, you know, having been in that corporate environment and seeing the struggle that some of my coworkers went through, when I saw the potential behind the technology Berkley was coming up with, it was just a no-brainer to me. Like, I have to do this. You know, this is my chance.
Amazing. All right. So some of the questions I have is, what is freeze drying? You know, what is the bacteria in the milk, and what's the gut microbiome? And Julie, I would love if you jump in here too, because as a medical doctor yourself, you have some insight into the gut microbiome and the bacteria in this breast milk. So tell us first what freeze drying is, though.
Absolutely. So freeze drying is it's a really simple process. It requires no chemicals or additives to be added to the breast milk. It basically just removes all of the water from a product by a process called sublimation. And so the basic steps in this is a deep freeze, then a deep vacuum, and then gentle heating. And so with this process, it can be done in bags, so it never has to contact our equipment. And it simply makes the milk, or the water that's in the milk, evaporate off without having to go through the thawing stage.
And there's no chemicals, there's no additives. You know, we don't add anything to that process to make that happen.
So I had a question though. Does the process of freeze drying or going through the lyophilization procedure that you have, does it either take away any of the good bacteria that's there? And maybe you could tell us a little bit about what is the good bacteria that's in breast milk, or does it add bad bacteria? And what would happen if there was any kind of introduction of bacteria into the powder?
Yeah, absolutely. So the bacteria that's normally in your breast milk, like I was saying, are the species that colonize the infant gut initially. So lactobacillus, you see them often in probiotics. Lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are some of the species that are those initial colonizers that you get from breast milk, and that are able to grow and thrive on the oligosaccharides, the sugars that are in your breast milk. That's what these bacteria eat, and that's how their populations grow in your infant's gut. And so one of the things that we really emphasize is a safe breast milk pumping procedure. So if there is anything introduced to the milk before we receive it as frozen milk, then that would be where the most potential for contamination would come in. So really, we emphasize if you're using safe breast milk handling practices to pump the milk initially, then that can prevent any kind of contamination. And like I said, since our process has several quality control steps, and it never comes in contact with our equipment, we have lots of sanitization protocols and things of that nature to prevent any kind of cross-contamination between your milk and somebody else's, or your milk and our equipment.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that was definitely one of the things that I was wondering about, is how exactly, I know you guys mentioned you have a pretty sophisticated barcode system. Like, how do you keep one woman's breast milk separate from somebody else's breast milk? And what are the logistics of somebody dropping off their breast? Like, how do they get it to you so that you can do the freeze drying and then get it back to them?
Yeah, so we have a tracking system. So every bag that we get, we basically take frozen milk from a mom, and that's what we use that's the powder that you receive back. And so each bag that we get is turned into powder and sealed in a barrier bag. And from start to finish throughout the process, from the time that we get it from the mom, we have a unique bag ID assigned to that one bag, and it's associated to the mom, to her account. And so throughout the whole process, from start to finish, it's tracked. And so we know exactly, how much it weighed when it got there, what the temperature was, the quality afterwards, and the weight afterwards. And so throughout the whole thing, it's tracked. And then the second part of your question, I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, I just wanted to know, like, how do women get their milk to you? Like, how does that
yes.
whole process happen? I know that we had talked a little bit about otter boxes or whatever to safeguard the milk. So maybe just walk us through that part again, because the like supply chain, logistics of it is really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 3 different ways that people get their milk to us. Basically, here in Houston, we have a by the box service. So women that have a freezer of breast milk stored up in their freezers can order boxes from us and then load up the boxes, and we just have couriers to pick them up. The second way that you can get frozen milk to us is by shipping it. If you're not in the Houston area, we have partners at Milk Stork, the trusted leader in breast milk shipping, that can help get milk to Houston in the case that you're not in the area. And then we also have partners around Houston, motherhood focused businesses and
employers with lactation suites, where women express while they're at work. And we've launched the world's first breast milk drop-off kiosk at the Motherhood Center. I think you guys have interviewed Gabriella before on your show. She's been very supportive of us. So we love Gabriella, and she's gone all in on bringing the first kiosk to her customers together with us. So what that means is, if you want to try our service, you can go to the Motherhood Center, and there's a freezer kiosk that is authenticated. You use your app on an app on your phone essentially to unlock it, and the otter boxes you're mentioning, you basically milk, you drop it in, and then your first bag is free. Once you drop your breast milk off there, you don't have to worry about keeping it refrigerated. You don't have to worry about carrying a cooler, because we know exactly who you are, and when you drop off the milk, we know your home address, and we send the powdered milk back to your home address within a week, and that's a free trial. We're also going to be launching subscriptions, a subscription service through these kiosks, and the idea behind a subscription service is, if you're a mom who's coming back to the office, you're expressing at work and you're worried about continuing your breastfeeding journey, that's a huge source of anxiety, and that's a huge source of just mental cognitive load that affects productivity and things like that. And it's there's harassment from coworkers for storing your milk in the fridge at work, and etc. So what we've done is we've developed this kiosk where we drop it off in the lactation room of your employer. And now if you're a mom and you show up to work, and you can just express your milk in the lactation room, drop it off in the kiosk, and same process. We pick it up once a week, we powder it, we send it back to your home address. That means that as soon as you're done expressing, you can go back to your conference calls, you can go back to your meetings, you can go back to focusing on work. And most crucially, you feel supported as an employee. And studies have shown that employers who support their employees with lactation support programs actually see a staggering drop in how many women leave those jobs because of the lack of support. So employee retention, is almost twice as high for employers who do invest in those sort of programs. The healthcare costs for women is much lower when they do breastfeed and when they do take advantage of those programs, by thousands of dollars compared to someone who feeds formula to their infant. So we're basically trying to break down these barriers to breastfeeding and bring the convenience of formula to breast milk in the context of work, and that's another way we're trying to bring a FemTech focus type of benefit to women who work.
I love this. One of the biggest issues in FemTech is when we try to fundraise, 97% of VC general partners are men. And so when we tell them this is a huge problem, a lot of times they say, I've never heard of it. I've never heard of this problem. And it's because women suffer in silence a lot with their, the anxieties we don't even realize we have, like getting to the pharmacy every month to pick up our birth control, right? Things that I've taken for granted too, that I'm like, oh yeah, add that to the list of things I have on my mind, Can you walk us through a day in the life of a woman who, baby is, maybe with a relative or in daycare, she goes to work and she needs to, as you say, express. I love that. That's so scientific and professional of you. She's gonna pump, right, at work. Can you give us some insight for any listeners who haven't breastfed yet, or our male listeners? What are you innovating here? Because it may come as an assumption that this is easy, women are doing it and they're fine about it. Tell us what it's really like.
So
we're about to go through this. So
yeah, exactly. So I remember the shock that I experienced watching a colleague go through this process when I wasn't familiar with it at all. And so when you return to work after having your child and you would like to continue breastfeeding, you do have to express the milk during the day to avoid inflammation in your they call it mastitis, to avoid problems with your own breast health, and to continue producing milk. So your milk supply is dependent on how often you're pumping or you're feeding. And so if you're not around your baby for an extended period of time, you have to continue pumping or expressing the milk in order to continue making the milk. And so during the day, you might have to do that. It depends, it varies for different women, but you might have to do this a couple times a day. It takes, 15, 20 minutes minimum if you don't have to walk too far to get to the area. And before this was really brought to the attention of employers, women were having to do this either, in a bathroom or in a space that was shared.
We spoke to one female investor who, she's one of the first backers of Milkify, and she was telling us about, when she was a banker in the 90s, she had, a glass office essentially, and she would put up poster boards and she would write F off on breastfeeding to keep her male coworkers from just, from just barging into the door while she's sitting there, right? And now we have laws that, say if you have a minimum amount of employees, you need to have a lactation room, and it can't be a bathroom, right? But even now, you were saying about how male coworkers are just unaware. So my previous employer had a lactation room, but it was called a quiet room, right? And so like the male employees who just walk by, like, we're not even aware of like why that room is there and who's using it. And so there is a lack of awareness, right? And like you said, that awareness would really change things in terms of just advancing how quickly we can bring that support to women who do want to continue breastfeeding and working at the same time.
And so a woman she expresses how it's like a one bag that she'll get, or is it multiple bags of milk a day?
Completely depends on the woman. Completely depends. Yeah.
And so let's say she has 3 bags, because she goes, I learned from y'all, she has to do this multiple times in a day. It's not just like a lunch break, right? She goes several times. She has these bags of milk, and without your kiosk to drop them off in, she has to leave them in a freezer next to Frank's Lean Cuisine, right?
Exactly. Right. And it's not just the
cooler to bring it home.
Exactly. So lugging the cooler to work, remembering that you have to have like an ice pack and keep it cool. You have to keep the milk cool while it's there at work with you. So in a fridge or freezer, if you're lucky enough to have one in your own office, that's great. But if you have to share it with your other colleagues, then, it's next to Frank's Lean Cuisine. And then, at the end of the day, this would especially be a problem for me, that just the cognitive load of remembering to take it home with you at the end of the day, especially if you're not, if it's something that you're planning to stockpile, if it's not something you're going to need for your baby right then, it would be very hard for me to remember at the end of the day to go to the fridge and get that and then put it in the cooler and then lug it home. So yeah, there's like I said, a cognitive load just associated with the whole process that I hadn't even really considered that women go through if they want to continue breastfeeding when they return to the workplace.
So I have a question, you guys just spent this very eloquent couple of moments explaining like why a woman would go through so many headaches and obstacles, and as you said, cognitive load of stress to go through this process. So like why is the microbiome, or why is what's in breast milk so important for their child's gut and their gut health and the, panoply of microbiota that's in that gut microbiome, and why bother? Like what is so important about this?
Yeah. So it's custom. The what a woman makes for her infant is customized to what her baby needs. It changes over time. It changes, if your baby make more antibodies, and that's in your breast milk. There's specific human milk oligosaccharides, and there's over 300 of these. These are the sugars that are in your breast milk. And so it's more than just calories that's in breast milk. There's a lot of different things. The diversity of the species of bacteria that are in your breast milk that get passed on to your infant, the antibodies that are also, mom specific antibodies that are really important to defending, just first of all, stimulating your infant immune system, or boosting your infant's immune system. In addition to the probiotics that are there stimulating your infant's immune system. So one of the things that these the microbiota, the bacteria, do for you when you're a baby is help to give your immune system that initial initial boost. It helps train your immune system, and that initial training helps prevent the incidence of allergies and allergic diseases like eczema later in life. And so these are the things that can't be replicated by infant formula because it is custom made.
Nature, has spent millions of years evolving the perfect solution to, feed human babies and make sure that they get to adulthood safely, no matter what, pathogens or what, pollutants are in the air, no matter how they evolve, how they're different from other babies. And so to think that, a large corporation that's publicly traded with a facility, putting essentially high fructose corn syrup and other, bad ingredients into a box, and then, sending it to you, the idea that that's going to be equivalent to breast milk is one of the ludicrous lies of, late stage capitalism and that we face as parents. That's one of the big cultural things that we just need to change if we want to reverse the, the spike in autoimmune diseases, the spike in allergies, right? Childhood obesity. There's even studies showing that infants who are breastfed have much higher IQs later in life. They earn more later in life. Women who breastfeed their babies take half as many sick days as women who formula feed their babies, right? So just let that sink in for a second. You literally miss twice as much work when you feed formula because your baby gets that much sick. You can see that we just took a parenthood class, and there was a slide showing how the color of a baby's poop changes when it's breastfed, and that's the natural progression. And when you feed your infant formula, the poop has a totally different color, and it changes color in different ways. And that just screams to me like this is just not
obvious sign that something is different.
If you want what's best for your baby, breast milk is simply there's no replacement. It is the gold standard. There's nothing that can replace it. Formula is appropriate if in certain cases, with breastfeeding is not, it's, contraindicated, or it's just not safe, or it's not possible for mom to be with baby. Formula is a great solution for that because not everyone can breastfeed. But if you're able to, then it is absolutely the best for your baby. And many moms know that instinctively, and they know that because they've studied it and looked into it. And so they want to do everything that they possibly can to continue breastfeeding.
That's one of the things that one of our goals basically is that infant formula is a lot more convenient in some ways. And so we'd like to bring the convenience of infant formula to breast milk, basically. So that if you can produce breast milk, we want to combine some of the benefits that you get with infant formula, and make it shelf stable for 3 years, make it in a powdered form that you can take with you on an airplane, give it to the husband for night feeding, things like that. So
I love that you brought up baby poop, because I know Julie says she asks her patients about their poop, and they are young girls that are like, what? And she's like, your poop's important, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, in our clinic, we talk about poop all the time. And I mean, some of the other things that you guys mentioned that, I mean, I feel like I have so many questions to ask you. But so I think, Berkley, you had mentioned, as your child is sick, that the bacteria in the breast milk that the mom produces might change in response to your child's illness in order to provide that child with the antibodies that it needs. Can you talk any more about that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of moms out there who may be wondering, am I supposed to eat something different to give my child the best boost possible? Or what do I do if my child is preterm? And is there something else that I can do to sort of, one up my breast milk for my baby? Or how do women approach, I guess, changing or modifying their own antibody production if it's possible?
That's a really good question. I know that there are certain products out there now that can stimulate breast milk production, like milk thistle, things like that. They're pretty rarely available in Target and things, to increase the milk supply if you're not making quite enough. But and I'm not a certified lactation consultant, but from the ones that I have talked to, as far as I know, if you're having problems breastfeeding, you can go see a lactation consultant to try and get some help if you're having problems with your baby latching, or if you're having problems producing enough milk for your baby. And so, but basically, if you are breastfeeding and your baby is sick, your body will automatically change. There's nothing that you need to do. There's nothing that you need to start eating. There's nothing that you need to start taking. This is an automatic response that we've evolved as humans to help keep our babies alive over, you know,
Yeah.
years,
No,
millennia of evolution.
It's
So
automatic, like your
yeah.
heartbeat. You know, it's not something you can control. I can't make my heart beat any faster. It'll beat faster or slower in response to, you know, how well I take care of myself and how, you know, my overall wellness and health and etc. And so, you know, I think if you just focus on your wellness and your health and the supply demand relationship between you and your baby breastfeeding, then that's, you know, typically the best way to go. And, you know, obviously women should talk to their doctors and monitor their specific individual situations. But in, you know, generally speaking, it is amazing how breast milk has evolved to be this magical, you know, all-in-one solution to your baby's health.
I actually am smiling as you're saying that. And I'm loving that you're saying just let it be, and it'll evolve just like any other microbiome. I won't get on the horse of like, don't touch your vaginal microbiome, because it'll just sort itself out. But I love your product because what I think it does is not only make it easier for women to be at work, it also reduces so much of the guilt, so much of that. It's not just the cognitive load of like, I have this stress of I need to remember all these things, but I think a lot of women feel just this overwhelming sense of guilt that they're going back to work. And am I doing something that will inherently harm my child because I have, you know, the push-pull pressures of life as well? I need to go back to work or whatever it is. And you guys are not only, you guys are making that so much easier for women who also need to travel, who need to have things convenient, who need to be able to, you know, not sit there and feel guilty about what they're doing for their child and also for their own breast health while they're at work.
Women shouldn't have to choose between work and family. That end of story, period. And that's what we're trying to do in Milkify, is we're trying to make it easier. We're trying to make breast milk as easy as formula so that you can go and do both. You know, you can't have it all. It's hard to have it all, but, you know, we're trying, right? We're trying to empower women to go on that breastfeeding journey and feel supported and, you know, be able to do their best, you know, and at the end of the day, that makes me feel good.
I love that. I feel like we should just pause there for a moment, let everybody like hit the rewind button for 15 seconds. Like, ladies, families, you don't need to choose. You know, if you want to be at work and you want to have a convenient product that is as convenient as formula with all the health benefits, you know, you don't have to pick one or the other. So I love what you guys are doing.
FemTech, right?
Yes.
Thank you, FemTech. It's not like y'all discovered freeze drying, right? It's not like y'all discovered pumping breast milk.
We didn't invent the freezer either, right? Like
Yeah.
But yeah, what we've done is we've taken different ideas and different technologies and brought them together in a specific way. We added our own proprietary secret sauce to it. And now we're launching something that I think really has a potential to help a lot of women and their infants. And by the way, also, you know, their partners and their coworkers, because guess what? If you're distracted at work, you become a bottleneck and the entire office suffers, right? And so this is good for everyone if we can just lift up all the women, you know, that are struggling with this, and, you know, it'll just be good for everyone. And I think that's pretty obvious once you see it.
Women's health is everyone's health, including the economies in businesses, right? We've been talking a lot about how breast milk is so good for the baby's health. I just have a question. Is breastfeeding good for the mother's health too?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would assume Julie can also talk to more to this, but they from the research that we've done, there's lots and lots and lots of research backing the fact that women that breastfeed have lower incidence of ovarian cancer, of breast cancer. You know, there's metabolic positive effects on your metabolism, things like that.
Returning back to your pre-birth weight and, you know, all sorts of health indicators and wellness indicators and productivity, and you name it. If, you know, if you're breastfeeding, then you're doing what your body is telling you to do, and that is going to have a positive impact on your health. If you can't breastfeed, then, you know, that is a very tough situation, and we would never want a woman to feel guilty because she can't. But at the end of the day, if you're able to and you do breastfeed, despite, you know, we know it's hard, we know it's challenging, but when you do follow through on that, then there's health benefits all around, and that's been shown by science.
Is there anything negative about breastfeeding?
You know,
in terms of health.
You know, I guess that you can say that, you know, if you're breastfeeding and that's making you feel more challenged at work, or if you feel like you're losing sleep, you know, your mental health comes into play. Health is such a complicated thing.
That's
it's, you know,
true.
never say a blanket statement is going to be very hard to make without, making someone feel left out or offended, or, I'm never going to be able to say something that's true for everyone. Right. And so in general, we can say breastfeeding is best. It's always best when you can do it, but always consider what else is going on in your life and in your health, and make the best decision for you and your baby. Because at the end of the day, if you're depressed and you're not getting enough sleep and you're miserable, your baby's also not going to be happy or healthy, no matter how much breast milk he's getting, right, or she's getting. So it is a holistic thing.
I didn't mean for that to be a trick question. You handled it really well. So I was just kind of brainstorming here. Julie, did you have any other questions about breastfeeding and the microbiome?
I mean, I had questions a lot about sort of preterm babies, or the breast milk, and how it changes if your baby is born preterm versus later term. And we may jump into this later on if you had ideas for like what's the next evolution of Milkify. I had a lot of ideas about just kind of matching women who maybe had term deliveries with women who had preterm deliveries, and sort of offering breast milk if some wasn't available. I think also, to dovetail off Britt's question, a lot of women have a lot of pain associated with breastfeeding, right? The nipple can get really cracked, really sore. It can be really painful to breastfeed, actually, which is why we have amazing lactation consultants. And I think we interviewed LactApp on our podcast, which was amazing. But maybe if you could say a little bit more about how the, bacterial content either changes as the baby is born at term versus preterm, what maybe that means. And of course, I also had questions about some of the bacteria is it actually the bacteria that's in the milk, or is it on the skin around the areola? And maybe if you could speak a little bit more about where's the bacteria actually coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of questions.
A lot there.
So,
yeah.
So, so the question between preterm and term babies. So the microbiome that's been seen in preterm babies has been a little bit different than term babies, especially depending on if there's other health factors involved in the delivery. And so, and if they're in the hospital and they're not able to get breast milk from the mother, or if there are complications to where they're not able to get breast milk, that has an effect in preterm babies. But as you know, with preterm babies especially, there's a need for that initial boost from the mother's immune system. So it's really important, since they can be immune compromised, to get those initial antibodies and to get that initial immune protection from the mother that comes with the colostrum or the first milk. And so that's one of the things that doctors, to my understanding, really focus on is in preterm babies, getting that milk to them when they're in the hospital.
As you know, Julie, for preterm babies, doctors prescribe breast milk as a medicine, right? And that's why we have 24 milk banks in this country, is essentially to provide. And I think there's something like 60 million ounces every year of breast milk that comes out of milk banks, and that goes to mostly preterm babies with prescriptions from doctors.
Right.
Now, I think we could do a much better job in this country of expanding access to that. So, and where I'm from in Brazil, we have over 100 milk banks. And the population of Brazil is like a factor of 2 smaller than the US is, right? And we have 1/4 the number of milk banks here. We have less milk banks than we have states in this country. So to me, that's just, we need more support. We need more of a culture here to make breast milk available to everyone, because it is it's not just medicine for preterm babies. This is medicine for all babies.
And like you're saying, there are a lot of restrictions that donor banks take into account with they do donor screening before anybody donates the milk. And so while I think it would absolutely be great for the future of Milkify to be able to help link these moms that need milk and moms that have too much milk, for right now, we're not linked up with the donor banks that would be able to do the screening, but that's definitely somewhere that we would like to go in the future.
It's the logical next step. As we scale up and as our operations are able to handle more and more scale, we've already talked to some milk banks, and we're trying to get those conversations started, because milk banks all over the world, not in this country, but everywhere else, in Germany, Australia, Canada, right? They are using freeze drying technology to preserve the breast milk. right? And so we're not doing, and they're doing that with government support, with research hospitals, right? They're doing it with doctors. And that's the research that, we review to essentially know that what we're doing is not just safe, but it's really been proven by science to be the best way to preserve breast milk. And so, milk banks in the US are maybe a little bit behind the curve. Maybe, there hasn't been enough support, investment, et cetera, in moving in that direction. But it is the logical next step. It makes too much sense for it to not happen eventually. And Milkify is here to simply accelerate that process.
Are milk banks funded by the government?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
All right, listeners, if you work at a milk bank, hit us up. We want to help you. We want to help get all the babies all the milk that they need.
Pedro at milkify.me. Shoot me an email and let's talk.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. I'm so glad we're friends because I could just text you about like milk poop and all the things that I ever wanted to know whenever I want. But I wanted to ask 3 last questions. The first one is, what is the future goals of Milkify?
So one of them is to keep expanding with our kiosk for making this drop off, the convenience factor available, not just in Houston, but expanding that everywhere. Also, like we were talking about, being able to be associated with milk banks is a potential direction that we'd love to be able to help with in the future.
Another goal that we have for the short term is to be able to bring our Milkify service to the entire country. And we've piloted now with a couple of customers through, who've used Milkstork to ship their breast milk to us. And we found that Milkstork has been a fantastic partner in making sure the cold chain transport is, every step of the way, the milk has remained, at the temperature that it needs to be, and it arrives at our doorstep, seamlessly. And then we powder it, send it back to customer, and customer loves it. And so, one of our goals is to really be able to launch this product and bring it to a national audience, and be able to scale it from there.
Can I just brag on FemTech Focus's part real quick? Because I got introduced to y'all and I was like, are you talking to Kate at Milkstork yet? And you guys were like, no, but we'd love to. I sent a quick email and now we're in a podcast. You're like, yeah, we're partnered. No big deal. And I'm like, FemTech Focus works. FemTech Focus works. Oh my God.
And don't be surprised if a huge box of chocolate shows up on your doorstep, for Milkify anytime soon, because, you're right. You guys have been a huge resource for us, and being able to talk to Kate has been hugely helpful in terms of helping us figure out the logistics of breast milk shipping. Because be honest with you, we tried it and it did not go smoothly.
It was a disaster.
It was a disaster.
Before Milkstore came in, they're perfect at what they do.
And it comes down to focusing on what you're good at, right? We're not breast milk shippers. We are, we powder breast milk safely. We do really well. We do better than anyone,
right? Kate doesn't have a laboratory. She has
PhD food safety manager running it, right?
Yeah.
Who designed every step of the way and trained personnel that are, performing the procedures and et cetera. Every I has been dotted, every T has been crossed from the science and operations perspective. Now, with Kate and Milkstork helping us with the logistics, we've now got that figured out. And so we hope to be able to continue doing that, expanding the breadth of our service, bringing Milkify to more and more cities across the country, to more and more employers through our kiosk, to more motherhood focused businesses through the kiosk, expanding our courier service so that we can go door to door and pick up your stash and powder it for you. Really anything, whatever it takes to be able to bring powdered breast milk and better infant nutrition to moms across the country.
Amazing. And another question, I guess it's like part B. What is your goal for the future of men in FemTech? Because you're a man in FemTech. So what's your goal and what's your vision for what you hope the future of men in FemTech looks like?
I hope that in the future it's going to be a no-brainer, for men who see an opportunity to be able to jump into FemTech without this little voice in the back of their mind saying, what am I doing? Why am I in the female-focused industry? Why am I, working with breast milk? And that little voice was there for me in the beginning. And it was something, we talked about this last time. You just kind of have to slap them and say, you're just scared. This is just fear, bro. Like, just get over it. Right. And that kind of
short circuits. Get over it. Talk about milk.
That's how you shortcut the male brain, it's a taboo. It's all it is. And the way you get rid of a taboo in the male brain is by short circuiting, by calling it what it is, which is fear. And, I was able to do that after a few months, and now, we're fully focused and we're doing amazing things, and it's extremely rewarding. And not only that, it's also profitable. There's a huge financial opportunity here. Anytime there's a pain point for customers, there is a huge opportunity to capitalize on And that's something I learned in the finance world. And we need more men to come into FemTech and support women. We need more women LPs. We need more men who are supporting those women LPs and women VCs. And we just need more, awareness and support from everyone.
I love it. Just slap them and tell them it's fear.
That's great.
We have a lot of aspiring founders that listen, and they're still looking for their idea. Berkley, I know you came up with this. You were already working with breast milk. You saw a colleague in the laboratory struggling with her breast milk storage, and you were like, wait a second, freeze, whoa, I could use this for humans. What are other areas of innovation that FemTech still needs, women's health and wellness still needs?
I think there's so many. The field really is open, and I think that there's a lot that the way that we came up with this is, like you said, putting two and two together from something that's in your own personal experience. It's by no means a closed field at this point. There's a lot of new products coming out every week, it feels like, that solve some problem that somebody has identified. Kate with Milk Stork traveled for work and had to pump for twins, and that's how she came up with Milk Stork. And it's things like that I think, taking your own personal experiences and turning them into something, don't just like let a problem sit there and stare you in the face. How are you going to fix this? And so I think that there's
and I'll jump in and from the man's perspective too, or not from the partner's perspective too, right? It's also like, talk to your wife, talk to your partner. If wife is feeding baby breast milk, like that's something that the baby needs to stay alive. Like, thank you for doing that. What are the challenges you go through, right? Like, if more men had that conversation, it wouldn't have taken this long, I think, for a couple to realize the opportunity to go, to start a Milkify. And I think if men take a more active role in just speaking with their partners and, just speaking to their female coworkers and just taking more of an interest, silencing the taboo voice in their head, and just trying to be more aware of what's going on and the challenges that people face, then the low-hanging fruit will present themselves, and those are where the new opportunities are going to lie.
I love that. What I hear is men should be curious and ask honestly.
Curiosity, yes.
And as a woman, know that if you are struggling with the problem, we promise you're not the only one.
That's right. Don't suffer in silence.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't suffer in silence.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's amazing. You guys it's just a conversation away from the next innovation, right? It's just you guys having honest conversations, and then, just exactly as you said, you didn't invent the wheel, you just put the pieces of wheel together in a different way. And that's literally exactly the definition of innovation. You just had one conversation and put it together differently. And it's amazing. You guys are really helping so many, not only women, families, babies, to get the nutrition, the antibodies that they need to reduce guilt, to help employers, to maintain productivity. I mean, you guys are really doing great work. And, thanks for having those conversations and slapping that fear and telling him to, where to put it. So
I love
I had one last question though, and this is like a
Julie, go for it.
total aside. So listen, I was reading about breast milk, is there anybody else that drinks breast milk, is reading all kinds of things about bodybuilders drinking breast milk, random question, but let's just hear it from the experts in breast milk.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, there is a black market for breast milk with bodybuilders because it's such a nutrient dense.
There's human growth hormone in breast milk.
Yeah.
And if you can't buy steroids, on some internet website, then I guess there's Facebook groups where you can buy breast milk, and that turns out to be, a way that but this is a minority of people, right? This is not, this is questions that we get this question from some people from time to time, and it's not something that, this is like how breast milk is being shipped and consumed and marketed, etc. We're focused on providing a service to women. Sometimes it's their own milk, sometimes it's milk from a surrogate or etc. But really, we're serving the infants, and we're making sure that their breast milk is stored in the best possible way. And that's the focus.
One other thing with these Facebook groups, where most of the trading that we understand is done with these kind of things, is done through kind of closet Facebook groups, but a lot of them have kind of wised up to that now. And the women that are selling the milk online, if you're being connected with somebody in a Facebook group, these Facebook groups are doing a better job of making sure that it's just women in the group that want to use it for their infants and not for things like that. So yeah,
is it actually useful for them? Do we know of the science if it's actually useful for bodybuilding?
My understanding is that, you know, they wouldn't be doing it unless it was useful. You know, I'm not trying to encourage anyone by any means to go do this, right? For not just for safety reasons, but if there's breast milk out there, it should be going to infants. There, you know, we barely meet the demand for infants, for preemies. You know, the 62 million ounces, and there's like 65 million provided by breast milk, by milk banks in this country. So we're like a couple of percentage points away from not meeting demand every year with preemies, right? And we'll see what COVID does this year, if whether we're meeting, you know, that the data is still, the jury's still out on that one, right?
All right, so bodybuilders, if you're listening, congratulations, you're talking about breast milk. We love it, but don't be selfish. Preemies need it.
Save it for the
What's wrong with creatine? Like, come on.
Not go down that road.
And don't contact Milkify. They will be very upset with you. They're in it for the infants. Our last question today is, what do you think the FemTech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
I think money, and not just, you know, not just money, not just dollars, but the dollars without the strings attached. So dollars coming from people who understand, you know, what the issues are and who understand, you know, what the problems are that need to be solved and addressed. We need more female VCs. We also need more female LPs, because VCs answer to the LPs, and it doesn't do anyone any good if you've got a bunch of female VCs answering to a bunch of male LPs who just want the same old software as a service company being invested in, right? You're just putting a FemTech label on your investment fund, and founders see right through that, I promise you, right? So you need female LPs, or you need an investment committee who's actually focused on female technology and technology that is going to improve the lives of females. And that, I think that's what FemTech needs the most right now.
Wow, love it. This has been awesome. Again, I'm so glad I'm friends with you. I can just text you questions. I've told many people in my life with and without breasts that Milkify is a thing, and they're like, we need a kiosk in our company. So let's end this with, like, how can if someone's listening and they're like, my office needs this, what should they do?
Sure, absolutely. They should contact me at pedro@milkify.me. You can also send an email to info@milkify.me or through our website, and we'll get in touch with you. We've got some marketing materials explaining more about the kiosk. We've got a production line. We're building these things. We're building them cost effectively and quickly, and we want to pilot as many of them as possible this year in Houston. We've got two more in the works now. The first one's at Motherhood Center. So if you're in the Houston area and you want to just check it out, come by the Motherhood Center in River Oaks, and you see it right in their lobby, and you can try it out. You can see how it works. And if you'd like one in your lactation room, supporting your female employees and through their breastfeeding journey, then get in touch with us, and we'll make sure that there's a kiosk placed in your lactation suite before we even get into the details and the financials. We just want to bring this service to more women.
Amazing. Well, thank y'all so much for what you do. Keep it up. Can't wait to see you be global.
You guys are an amazing power couple. Thank you for everything that you're doing for women and for babies and for families. And congratulations on your upcoming young one joining your family too.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys so
Thanks
much
for having us.